Hi friends, welcome back to Miss Coram's Corner. So this week is all about fairy tales. So we'll be talking about a lot of the classics like Little Red Riding Hood and the Three Little Pigs and Goldilocks and the Three Bears, as well as many others. So I'm going to start off with my favorite fairy tale of all time, The Princess and the Pea. Once upon a time, there was a very handsome prince, both strong and kind. He was every princess's dream come true. When the prince grew up, he decided it was time to find a princess to be his wife. With high hopes for adventure that lay before him, the prince said goodbye to the king and the queen and set off to travel the world in search for his princess. The first princess he met was Princess Penelope. Penelope had glamorous red hair and porcelain skin like a doll. "Did you want to play tennis or go horseback riding? Let's play tennis," she declared, without giving the prince a chance to answer. Unfortunately for the prince, the rest of their visit was quite the same. Penelope was only interested in herself. It wasn't long before he continued on his way. Next he met Princess Maud. She was kind enough to ask the prince how he was doing, but it wasn't long before they ran out of things to talk about. Not only did Maud not say much, but she didn't do much either. The prince quickly grew bored and bid Maud goodbye. When the prince met Princess Lobia, he thought that surely she was the princess for him. But as they ate lunch together, Lobia turned out to be rather unpleasant. When she burned her tongue on some hot soup, she screamed wildly and blamed it on the cook. The prince thought that was rude and silly, since anyone with good sense would know to wait for their soup to cool. And so the prince grew tired of meeting princesses. There was something not quite right about each one he met. Sad and discouraged, he decided to put an end to his search and headed back home. One evening after the prince had been home for some time, a terrible storm broke out. It thundered louder than ever, and lightning flashed through a threatening sky. Rain poured down the great torrents, and the worst storm in the kingdom he had witnessed in ages was certainly not a night to be out and about. Suddenly, when the storm seemed at its worst, with rain hammering loudly against the windows and the rooftop, there was a knock at the castle door. Who could be knocking at a time like this? Wondered the king. He was so curious that he went to the door himself to see who it could be. Standing in the rain, soaked to the bone, stood a girl. Her hair was dripping and stringy, and her drenched clothes clung to her tiny frame. When she shifted her feet, water squished out of her shoes. She was certainly a sight to behold. "Pleased to meet you," she said to the king. "My name is Isabella, and I'm a princess." The old king looked at Isabella, and Isabella looked at the king. "I see," he said. "Please come in from the storm." The king told the queen about Isabella's declaration. Any girl could claim to be a real princess, but was she really one for sure? We'll see soon enough if the girl speaks the truth, thought the queen. But she said nothing. Isabella was shivering with cold from her sodden state. The queen showed her upstairs to a part of the castle where she could take a hot bath and warm up and change into some dry clothes. Isabella was so relieved she had traveled far and was thankful that the king and queen were so kind. Meanwhile, the queen went to the bedroom where Isabella was to sleep that night. She stripped the bed of its blankets and bedsheet and laid a single small pea on the bedboards. The queen placed the mattress on top of the pea, and then she piled another mattress on top of the first, followed by another, until there were 10 mattresses piled on top of the little pea. That should do it, thought the queen, and she left the room and closed the bedroom door. Isabella felt much better after a hot bath. When the queen arrived to show her her room, she was surprised to see that fact that the girl was quite pretty. She even looked like a real princess. We'll see about that, the queen thought to herself. When Isabella entered the bedroom, she was astonished by the majestic bed before her. "This bed looks wonderful," she said excitedly. Isabella thanked the queen and bid her good night. "Sleep well, and we'll see you at breakfast," said the queen. Isabella stretched and yawned. She was anxious to get a good night's rest. It had been a very long day. She hopped into bed, settled under the covers, and as she snuggled in, she felt a lump in her back. What do you think could be causing the lump? The pee? Yeah, I think so too. Let's see. That's funny, thought Isabella. This is a luxurious royal bed. She adjusted her pillow, shifted positions, and snuggled in deeper. There, that should do the trick, she decided. But Isabella could still feel the lump. Well, this just won't do, she complained. She sat up in bed and rubbed her back. What in the world could it be, she wondered. Isabella lay down again and attempted to relax. But try as she might, she could not find the right spot or position, and spent the night tossing and turning atop the most magnificent-looking bed. Finally, in the early hours of the morning, she slept for a short time, only to wake with a terrible ache. Even before she sat up, Isabella felt the pain. While it was mostly her back that had bothered her through the night, now she was sore all over. She winced with every movement. How was she going to climb down from such a height? With great difficulty, Isabella clambered out of the large bed. When she saw her reflection in the mirror, she was startled. Her hair was a frightful mess, and her eyes were droopy with fatigue. I'm in no state to go to breakfast like this, she thought, but Isabella knew she would have to join the king and queen for breakfast. She changed out of her nightgown and combed her hair. She still looked tired, but there was nothing she could do about that. She opened the bedroom door and went downstairs. When Isabella sat down to breakfast with the king and queen, the queen surveyed the tired-looking girl. "And how did you sleep last night?" she asked. Isabella was torn. She didn't want to tell the king and queen that she had a terrible sleepless night after all their kindness, but she also didn't want to lie. "I'm sorry to say, dear queen, that I did not sleep very well at all," she said at last. "I lay all night on some hard thing, and now my whole body is black and blue." To Isabella's surprise, the queen smiled. "Only a real princess would feel the pee I placed under 10 mattresses in your chamber last night," exclaimed the gleeful queen. "Nobody but a real princess is so delicate." Soon after, Isabella met the prince. To the prince's relief, Isabella was nothing like Penelope, Maud, or Lilioba, or any of the other princesses he had met on his travels. In turn, Isabella thought that the prince was the most kind and handsome man she had ever met. The two quickly fell in love and were happily married soon after. As for the pea, it was placed on display in a museum. It's still there to this day, sitting on a red velvet pillow behind a glass case on a pedestal for all to see. The end. Thank you so much for listening to my favorite fairy tale. I hope you enjoy the rest of the fairy tales that we discover this week. Bye, everyone.